Hey, another day of coding. It's going to be fun. Mark Price here, devslopes.com, and today we are going to do some Reflux on our product shop app, and we're also going to get our email lead capture form submitting to our server. So that'll be fun. So, open up my handy dandy terminal here, and I'm already in the product shop folder. So I'm just going to say atom space dot to load up the file. And there it is. Okay, so first things first, let's get our project organized for Flux, or rather Reflux. And remember what we need to do? We've got actions and stores and listeners, more or less. So that's what we need to do. And so we'll do the same kind of project setup we did last time. So over here in the source, let's right click and go to new folder. And we're going to call this Reflux. And there we have it. I'm going to right click it and go to new file, and I'm going to call this actions.jsx. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger so we can look at it here. And do you remember how the actions work? What you're supposed to put in there? Well, I do. You just put your actions for your app. And as of right now, we're just going to have one action, which is going to be submit email, because that's all we're doing right now. We can add to this as we go along. Okay, and let's say submit email. That's it. Not bad. Module.exports equals actions. Cool. So there's our actions, right? Reflux.create actions. We probably should install Reflux. It's one of those things where you just start going and you realize you got a problem, so you fix it. So we are in the directory, so let's say npm install Reflux -- save. Boom. Installed. Easy peasy. Now we know we're going to need a store, right? So let's create a new store. So new file, and let's call this email store. Why not? Because we can. And now the store is where obviously our data is, and that's what will communicate with our HTTP service, which we have not created yet. But more or less, that's what it's going to be doing. So let's go ahead and pretend that we've implemented HTTP service. And if you want, you can grab it from the other project. That's what I'm going to do. .. and we'll pretend it's in services / HTTP service.js. So we pretended it's there. Let's actually put it there. So on the source folder, I'm going to do a new folder called services. And in that services folder, I'll do a new file. We're going to call this http service.js. And wham bam, there it is. So if you want, you can go get one of those earlier projects that we've done, or you can just follow along with what I'm doing here. I'm just going to actually grab it from where I had it before and bring it on over. So copy and paste. Easy enough, right? And this looks good to me. So anyway, you should have this in your previous project with the HTTP and fetch. If not, feel free to follow along here. And this is also available in the source code. And so we know we need to install fetch. All right. And by the way, that's the benefit of having libraries available to you, things that you store in GitHub. If you're not using GitHub, I'm going to strangle you. You should be using it, or Bitbucket, and you should definitely be using Git, of course. So terminal, I'm not going to strangle you. Okay, legal reasons. Okay, officially, I'm not strangling anybody. All right, so just what I need. You know, someone like calls a lawyer because they're fearing that I'm going to go strangle them. I will not strangle you. I've never strangled a person in my life. Okay, so here we go, and product shop master. Okay, so we're just going to install fetch. npm install what wg -fetch -- save. There it is. So that's installed. We'll leave this localhost URL here. This all looks good to me. Cool. Yeah, I like it. And between the last code deposit of this HTTP fetch, I did change this to just body, make it more generic. It doesn't have to be ingredients if that's what yours says, or whatever specific data you want, because you want to reuse these functions as much as possible. And there's always going to be a body and there's always going to be a URL. So This is pretty clean and it's reusable. Okay, so we've got our HTTP service in place. Let's go back to the email store and let's go ahead and finish implementing this. So var reflux equals require reflux. Okay, var actions equals require / actions.jsx. Okay, because it's in the same directory. And let's create our email store. Var email store equals reflux.create store. Okay. Listenables, remember? Listenables. We're going to pass in the actions because those are the actions we want to listen for. And the name of our function in our actions is submit email. So we can actually copy this and just put it right there. And remember, this function has to be named the exact same thing that's in your action in order for it to be called. And Reflux handles that for us automatically. So submit email, and we're going to assume that a subscriber is going to be passed to us, a first name and email. So we're assuming that data is going to get sent to us. And then what do we want to do? What type of request will we make if we are submitting an email to a server? Well, probably a post request. So let's do that. http.post, and the endpoint is going to be called subscribers. We'll create this in a minute here. And the object we're posting is going to be the subscriber here. And remember, this is our HTTP service that we're calling right here. So there's our subscriber, and let's do a dot then, our promise here. It's going to receive a response, as you can see, and as we've done before. And let's assume that the server is going to send us a message. We're going to design that as well too. So we'll start off with an empty message, and if response.status, I'm just showing you some new ways of interacting with requests and response data. So if response status is 200, meaning it was successful, we'll say message equals email submitted. Okay, that looks good to me. And then else. Oh, I didn't put a semicolon. That's just nasty. Okay, there we go. Else, otherwise, it didn't successfully submit. So message equals submission failed. And we're just going to use this for logging purposes. We're not actually going to implement tons of error handling here. And this dot trigger, and we'll pass in the message. So the trigger, of course, is what you call on Reflux when you want to trigger something. And so we're going to trigger. We're going to call it trigger, and when we create the listener for it, it will trigger the listener. Okay, so we're going to bind this, of course, so it's referring to the correct this. And let's export this. Well, not export this. Let's export our email store. JavaScript and that dang this keyword. Like, they should just change it to something that is not a normal word that you would normally say every 5 seconds, gal. This. Okay. Self. Like everyone else uses self. Why not use self? Why does it be this? Okay, module.exports equals email store. So what we've done is we've imported Reflux actions. We've made the listenables, so we're listening for those actions here. Submit email will be called whenever that action is triggered, and we're going to make the post and listen for a success or an error, and then we're going to trigger that. Last time, I didn't just do the trigger here inline. I created a function so multiple actions could trigger it, but we only have one, so it's fine. And that looks good to me. So let's go look at our HTTP service. Just make sure all is in order over there. We're passing in a subscriber. And so it's getting passed right here into the body. And this all looks good to me here. Okay, so there's our store. I guess the next thing that we need is the actual listeners for our lead capture. So let's do that now too. Go into components and forms and lead capture. Okay, and what we want to do is, of course, add those mix-ins. But we can't do that unless we import stuff. Aha! So var reflux equals require. And we're going to say reflux. Var actions equals, no equals, require. And where is this thing living? It's up a couple directories because we're in forms when we go to components and then go into one. So we're going to say // to go up 2 directories there, /actions.jsx. Okay. And then var email store
equals require, there we go, // flux / email store.jsx. Okay, now we can add our mixins. And of course, your mixins are where you set your listeners. Reflux listen to email store. And the name of our callback function will be onChange. Same as we did last time. Keep it fresh, keep it real, keep it the same. Not fresh. You're like, this guy talks too much. Well, it's 12:50 a.m. in the morning, okay? So I can say whatever I want because my brain's only half functional. I'm just kidding. I'm giving you top quality stuff here. I took lots of caffeine. Okay, so mixins, reflux.listen to, email store onChange. So whenever a change is made, it's going to call this function here, which has not been implemented yet. And I'm going to put it right here. By the way, I try and keep my render function at the very bottom as often as I can, just so it's, because I use it, you often modify it and go back a lot, and it's always nice just to scroll down. It's just conventional. You can do whatever you want. And maybe you're used to seeing like, the event and the second, parameters of the data, but you don't have to. That's optional. If we just put one parameter in here, it's just going to pass us the data that we want. And in this case, it's just a message. And so, what would we do here on change? Send the message. You know what? Also, do we want to, the second a user clicks that button, do we want it to automatically say it was successful? No, probably not. So let's take it out of here, and let's do it when the callback comes, when it's done talking to the server here in onChange. Now, our request could fail. I'm not handling that here. I recommend that you do that as an extra here is on this change here. It doesn't have to be a message. You could have sent the status code. You could have sent a failure. You could have sent back whatever you wanted here to this listener, and then you can handle it accordingly. So remember how we have that success text right here? You could do the same thing here. If it was a success, make it say success. If it was a failure, make it say failure. That would be a really good exercise to do. And I may just make you do that. And so here we are setting the state. In this case, we're just going to set it to be successful. And I can just console.log the message just to make sure we got here. And so, yeah, we're listening here. And so the last thing that we probably need to do is actually just trigger the action. And that would happen on submit right here. So it would be actions dot submit. I think that's what we called it, submit email. And here's our email address, or our object here. It's a little bit long. Let's just call this a subscriber. And let's pass it in here, subscriber. And it has an email and it has a first name. We didn't have to change that, so that looks great. So we're submitting the email to the action that's being called. That will in turn trigger this function here. It'll pass it in. We'll post it. Okay. Well, let's see if our code is compiling before we actually build our server here. So I'm going to run npm start. And we have an error. It can't find the module. Okay, so I did something wrong. And this is from product shop source in the forms. Okay, actions.jsx. So I broke something here. Let's go to our lead capture. I probably just have a wrong path in here. So we are in the lead capture form, and so we need to go up one into components, and yeah, we need to go up two. So 1, 2, and then we go into, I called it Reflux this time. That's why. I had been calling it Flux. This time I called it Reflux. So there's the problem fixed. Let's go to the terminal. And it looks like we still have a problem. An email store on line 1. This always reminds me of like the Bible or something. I want to say like chapter 1, verse 9. No, on line 1, character 9, email store JSX. Let's take a look at that here. And it is looking for no equal sign. Okay, let's take a look at the terminal again. There we go. It wrote this time, 0.45 seconds. Okay, so that's looking good. Let's go ahead and build our server. And to do that, we'll just download our skeleton server that we've worked with multiple times. So github.com/devslopes and Simple Express server. and download it and click it. And I'm going to put it on the desktop. We're going to call this server. And I'm going to go to my terminal, make a new tab, Command T, and cd ... go into my desktop and cd into server. There it is, looking good. And let's go ahead and open this in Atom. It'll load, I promise. It's coming. There we go. So there we go. We don't want ingredients, right? We want emails. So I'm just going to change this around. This is boilerplate stuff. That's why I made it boilerplate, so you can quickly change it around. So this one's going to be subscribers. All right. And this ID can stay the same. And we'll call this one email. And I believe the other one was first name, like so. And so I'm just pretending there's an email in here. And we'll call this Joe. And email Joe at Schmo. He thought I was going to say something else. Joe at schmo.com. And Schmo, is that even a word? Hopefully not. Hopefully it's nothing vulgar, huh? Okay, Schmo. Don't be a Schmo. First name, email ID, that looks good. Just a quick example of what our data is going to look like. And I'm going to copy this word subscribers, change this to subscribers, change this to subscribers, change this to subscribers. So it sends back subscribers on the GET request. And on the POST request, I'll just call this subscriber and subscriber. So subscriber equals request.body, console.log request.body, and ingredients subscribers.push subscriber. You got all that? I'm just changing it around, that's all. And let's make a unique ID here. So let's say subscriber, oops, not var, come on. Subscriber.id equals math. Okay. How come sometimes it pops up with weird stuff? Look at that. For in, for of. No, I don't. Math. Was it a capital floor? I think it's just this. And we want to do date, a date, right? Maybe just timestamp it, make a unique ID. That's all we're doing here for the sake of React. Math.floor, date.now divided by 1000. Just throw some milliseconds in there for the current time. And we'll just add request.body.email, just the email address. So it'll be like the timestamp plus the email, just a unique ID. This is not what you might do in a professional application. In a professional application, you're probably talking to a database, like a MongoDB, for instance, and it will generate unique IDs for you for each of these. But since we're not doing that, we got to make our own up. So that's why we're doing it this way. So, okay, unique ID, and we push it up there, and then we successfully posted the ingredient. So that's what it looks like. I mean, this could have failed, for instance, if, let's say it was an invalid email, somehow it got through, or some other problem, or it was a spam email. You could write some code and then you could reject it. Send, instead of a 200, you could send a 404, 401, or 500, or whatever common status error there is. But this looks good for now. Let's go ahead and load this puppy up. Go to terminal, and I'm going to turn on my node here. Okay, and let's go ahead and say nodemon server.js. That looks like it's running. Okay, and that's on port 6069, so that should be fine. And then let's take a look over here. So I'm going to Command T to open up a new tab here, and then nvm use again, so I can turn on node, because this time we're going to load our application up via HTTP server. Okay, so I'm in the product shop folder, HTTP server -p, and this time we'll do 7659, just because. So it's serving, now serving, and I'm going to load it up. Okay, let's come on up here. All right, so sometimes when I'm building, I like to keep my console open, Command-Alt-J, and that's just the icon, which is fine. And so get free ebook. Let's see if it's working. Mark at mark.com. That's like a vanity email address, huh? So I clicked submit. Email was submitted. So we know this worked if the data is there on the server. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go load up Postman. This is what I like to use. There's a bajillion tools you can use, and you guys are probably like already thinking, oh, you shouldn't use this, not yet, blah, 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 blah. I get that all the time. You should use this tool, not that tool. Everyone has their own tools. Don't be a tool, just pick a tool. Okay, so we're on localhost 6069, and our server is at subscribers. So we posted to subscribers, and we get at subscribers. So if I do a get request here, which is already set up, I should see 2 email addresses. So here we go, and there we go. So it worked. So what do we know is working? We know our actions are working. We know our listeners working. And you're like, well, how do we know our listeners working? Well, because the submitted, this success right here turned green, and that came from the trigger chain. So we know that the listener's working. We know that the trigger's working. We know that the HTTP service is working. We know that our server's working. It's all working. So, so that is working. Our form is working. And so here's something interesting. So let's say that you really wanted to make this into a really capture form. We're not going to do that here, but I want to show you something real cool. If you use MailChimp or another service like Mandrill, it's like say MailChimp API, okay? What you would do is on this note, I'm going to go to API 3.0. It's their newest stuff. Get started. If I was going to talk to the API, you wouldn't do it through your browser, okay? We wouldn't use Fetch or any other library because first off, there's cross-origin browser issues that we have to account for. Secondly, it's not secure, especially when you have API keys and things like that. So a typical use case is when you're working with a server and you have to use complex data or post requests, things like that. It's very common and recommended that you actually build out your logic on your server. So this code over here, okay. So right here, what you would do is you would build secure endpoints, and likely these would be hosted on the same IP address at least. If not, you can allow whatever URLs you want from your server, and so your server would take these requests, it would clean up all this information, and your server would talk directly with like the MailChimp API and things like that. So that's kind of how you would do it. That's the secure, best way to do it. You'll probably find yourself pulling out your hair if you try to do complex API requests from the client itself on a browser. That's not the case with iPhone or Android or other clients. It's just browser clients have these issues. So very insecure. You can right click someone's website, view page source, dig into all kinds of stuff. Web development, it's the wild, wild west, that's for sure. So there you have it, our email form. It is working. I think it's kind of cool. It's coming together. So that's it. Mark Price here, devslopes.com. Let's move forward. And remember, to get your free live help, go to devslopes.com and click on chat room. I'm there all the time, as well as a huge community of other students.